Hey everyone, Ben here. Welcome to another episode of the Stellar Work podcast. This time, I'm interviewing Timm Richter, who published a book about managing the paradox together with Thorsten Groth. As managers, we're always making decisions under uncertainty. This episode is about how to navigate the uncertainty, how to build consensus in times where there is no obvious answer to things, and how looking at problems through the lens of Timm gives us an extra perspective. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Stellar Work podcast. Welcome, Timm. Glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you, Benjamin.
Of course. I was reading so many books about Luhmann and theory of social systems during my university degree, and I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. I got stuck in career. I got stuck in consulting and projects, and it somehow went off my charts. But then I discovered your book, which a couple of people recommended to me. And I thought, why not reach out and let's do an episode about it?
Yeah, happy to do that.
But before we talk about the book, maybe you can give us a brief introduction of who you are.
Sure. So I studied, in fact, mathematics and computer science. That's how I began. And after that, I started my career at McKinsey for a couple of years. And then I met my wife, so I settled down and lived most of the time in Hamburg and worked on various companies and various management positions. So I was an MD in a daughter company subsidiary of TUI, a subsidiary of Amadeus, so that was in the travel industry. I also was the chief product officer at XING from 2013 to 18. And after that, I founded my first company, that is Neoculture. And we actually designed an online method to observe and describe company culture. And for the ones who are in the DACH region, they might know Kununu. And there's the Kununu Kulturkompass. And that is actually the method they are using, is our method. They licensed it. And then in 2021, I started working at Simon Weber Friends. In fact, I'm a managing director there and also shareholder. And there we do courses and education and consulting, and all with a systemic system theory background.
Awesome. Your book has a very complicated title. I'm going to read it in German.
Okay.
It's called Zwischen Inszenierung und Invisibilisierung, Systemisches Paradoxie-Management in Organisation. And for everyone who does not speak German, welcome back. What is this about? It was so hard for me to even translate it in preparation for this episode.
Yeah, it's in fact also, even if you are German and reading the title, it's still a little bit mysterious. And in fact, we had a lot of discussions with our publisher whether or not to pick that title. And because we have this systemic paradox management in the subtitle, the publisher finally went along with that, because if you look at ranking at Amazon and the like, they don't differentiate between title and subtitle. It's all one. So for search, it works. And if you think about why did we pick it? So in English, you might translate it with, it's a little bit like staging something, showing off, if you will, and at the same time making it invisible, hiding. Or concealing things. And that's exactly about the paradox. And the idea is there, the kind of ways how to handle paradox in the real world, in life, in organizations. And normal way of operating is that we don't see paradoxes most of the time. And how you can imagine that, and that might be a good secondary translation, is most of the time we pretend as if there is no paradox. And most of the time it works. So that's the kind of, we pretend that there is something else instead of the paradox, and by that we don't see it.
Can you give me an example of a paradox that could appear in a company?
Yeah. In fact, the most important paradox that appears in companies all the time is decisions. So a decision, by definition, is in fact paradoxical. And most of the time, we don't see that. And if you think about it, whenever if I give courses about leadership, and then we are talking about decision making, and then I ask everybody, okay, who really wants to make the right decision? All hands go up. And if you ask, okay, you're pursuing that, who believes that there is out there the right decision? If you only search long enough, gather information, do some kind of rational thinking and whatnot, who believes that then by that method you will find the right solution? And not all hands go up, but pretty much 80%. So this is what we are all doing all the time. We are thinking about a decision, that there is a right decision to be made. And if you think about it, that's not possible. So the task of making a decision means actually that you don't know. And it's only in the case that you don't know something. In that case, you have to make a decision.
So actually, it's basically everywhere, because we have to make decisions, so we have to manage the paradox on a team level, on a strategic level.
Exactly.
And we have to face that somehow. We have to live with it, sort of.
And it really comes down to the situation we are in. There's uncertainty all over the place, especially about the future. Nobody really knows. And what we are doing in the decision-making process, we are trying to find information to get more certainty about the future. And sometimes for small things, it actually works. So if you are saying, oh, I want to buy, say I'm trying to get a supplier for something, and they have all the same quality, easy, and then there's one who is cheaper, you say, okay, easy. I take, if it's the same quality, I take the one who is cheaper. But in fact, in that kind of situation, you don't really have to decide anymore, because it's clear.
Because you ignore a bunch of stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is the blind spot. You have decided beforehand that you just get out of a lot of stuff which might also have some kind of causal power. You basically set an experiment, if you will. You define the context in a very dense or a precise way. You leave all the complexity out, if you will. And in that kind of setup, then you can actually, you don't have to decide anymore, because then you can calculate your problem. And there's a very nice quote from Heinz von Förster, cybernetics guy, who said it's only the undecidable that we have to decide. Which sounds, in fact, paradoxical, and it is, because you're saying, hey, wait a moment, if it's undecidable, how can I then decide it? And what he meant by that is that if you look at decidability, that's actually in mathematical terms, the question, can I calculate it? So in mathematics, you are saying, if I can find an algorithm who tells me exactly whether or not something is true or false, then in mathematics you call it, okay, then it's decidable. What we have, especially in organizations, especially in all kind of social settings, are situations where you can't give an algorithm, because you are always missing information about the uncertain future.
So is that the best way to manage the paradox? By ignore it sounds a bit naive to just go with, okay, ignore a bunch of stuff and then it becomes easy, in air quotes.
Quite frankly, that is the way how we handle most of our life, is ignoring a lot of stuff, or put it positively, focusing on some things, which implicitly also means that we made a decision, but you're not talking about the decision of setting the context. Yeah, and we are doing that because once you do it, you actually make progress. And you can move on, and that's what it's all about. Yeah, you can then do some action. You get more information, obviously, or different information you might want to adapt. But fundamentally, and that's what it's all about, what we are also talking in the book, you always have to substitute information by a decision where you can't be sure. And that is always what's happening. So if you are in a decision situation, there are options or alternatives. And the decision is defined by, say, you have two options, A and B, or two alternatives. And then you say, I pick A. In which way you also said, okay, A is the one to go. But it's only in decision if you could have chosen also B. So it's still an alternative. So at the same time, you are saying those two options are equal, in the sense I could have picked both of them. And at the same time, they are different because you picked one and not the other. And that is the kind of paradox you are always facing with. And you're doing that. And once you have done that, you change the future in a sense. Because once you made a decision, it will have causal power and life-changing effects. For example, if you are saying, I'm going to marry this wife, this woman, or this man. By doing so, you change the future, I suppose.
Yeah, and you ignored like many million other options.
Exactly.
Without knowing them.
Without knowing them. Some you don't know at all. Some you exclude kind of consciously in your personal decision making process. And it's also quite interesting and telling. What we are in effect saying here is that you construct your own reality or the situation you are in.
How come?
Because what you are setting up a scene, a kind of world view, or you could also say a map of reality. And once you constructed that, then you are going to make decisions in there, or hoping for being able to calculate something. And if you look at the kind of field you are working in, I suppose a lot of people are or know the Cynefin framework. Where we are talking about, okay, there are simple situations and complicated one and complex one and chaos. And we are staging, as if the world outside is either simple, complicated, complex, or chaos. And we just have to find out in which situation we are in. And if you look a little bit further, you could notice that this kind of situation you are in, that is self-constructed by yourself, because you have chosen a scenario, and those
because you set the boundaries.
Exactly.
You know what paths you want to take, which paths you include right away.
Yeah, exactly. Because a situation is complicated not because it's complicated per se, but you have constructed it in such a way that it becomes complicated, and so you can then solve it. And what you are hiding or concealing is the fact, what kind of decisions did I make implicitly about the context I have chosen, and all the complexity is basically in the environment, in the outside. And a lot of times, unfortunately, I would say, people or managers don't realize that. However, if you have read our book, you might be aware of the fact that if you are in a complicated situation, it's only because you set it up like that, and you are still and always open and considering in a kind of reflexive movement of, okay, what are the kind of things I actually left out? And is it, in the way I defined a problem, is it appropriate to my situation? And that kind of reflection should always take place.
It sounds very meta what we're talking about. And I wonder if you could give us an example. Like if we take two companies, one is managing the paradox really, really well, and one isn't. What would be the observable difference for us?
Effectively, and I give you two answers to that. The one is in a meta way. Whenever that company survives, it was good enough. Yeah? So it managed all the paradoxes in a very good way. Or put it in a different way, that kind of company or organization had constructed a map of the reality that we don't know in such a way that it was good enough to survive. So that is always the litmus test you have in the end, survivability. If we make it a little bit not so meta, but a little bit more concrete, I would really go on the decision again, because that's so central in an organization. If you think about it, I just claimed in saying you never know a decision, because you don't know better. Because of that very fact, you have to make a decision. Now, that doesn't work in organizations. If you go around and say, I don't know, and because of that, I decide this, everybody's saying, wait a moment, that's not going to work. So in organizations, you have to hide somehow this paradox. And in practical terms, organizations are really good and invented quite a few ways to handle this paradox of deciding and to get over it. Say, if you look, for example, in IT companies or technical companies, the way you are doing it is saying, okay, we define criteria. So, for example, you told me before that you are doing some kind of SAP projects. So, suppose you have to choose a supplier or a certain software. How do you do that? Okay, you have some options, and then you make an Excel spreadsheet, and you put down those are our criteria, and this is the weights we give them, and for each of the criteria, we have a catalog of questions and so forth.
And actually, I go on the internet, I go on Reddit, and I read rants about suppliers and about software, and just read through every vicious bit of text that is out there telling me how bad my decision would be if I go with that specific vendor or that specific software. So I feel like I would need both. Like
what's happening is, I mean, there are two systems we are looking at when we are talking about decisions. One is psychologically. So you are making up or coming up with a decision for yourself. And then what I think is much more important is how do actually companies or organizations come to a point that they can make decisions. That's a social process. That's something different. So how come that within an organization, say maybe an investment committee or whatever, the board or whoever, or the project team, whoever is going to decide, how do they manage to actually say, this is our decision in our organization? And then following action is actually according to the decision made. So how do you make that happen? And to do that,
go ahead.
And to do that, as I said, if you are talking to tech companies, a lot of time they are coming up with criteria and weights for the criteria and setting up an Excel spreadsheet. And then they put in some numbers and falls out, okay, out of our 4 suppliers or solutions, we should take A because that scored the highest. By doing that, everybody goes with it. So that's an art, a way of making decisions, which is actually working in those kind of companies and in that context, and they move along. The blind spot, obviously, is who said that those are the criteria to choose. They were chosen implicitly. Who said that the weights are this way? They could also be different weights. So all the kind of decisions you made before are somehow hidden, and you can move on. And that's one way in companies how they move forward. And in fact, a lot of people know that intuitively. Because they asked you before, and let's see, if we chose that criteria and give it a little bit more weight, what would happen? I see, that makes sense to me, doesn't it? So everybody is kind of playing a game and looking a little bit into this kind of process, and that's a kind of art, how to make sure that then afterwards everybody follows along.
Is that what you mean when you say staged? Because it sounds like a play at a theater.
Exactly.
And depending how good the show is, you get different results.
Yeah, and you always have to see what is the show that is accepted in this organization. So, for example, there are other organizations who are not into facts, or you can't really impress by quantitative KPIs. They are saying, no, it's about quality, and we have to talk to each other, and there is this intuitive feeling we all have. And there might be organizations where you can only make a decision by consensus. So if the people who are involved actually agree, then we move on. And that's a different problem to solve. Then you are not talking about anymore about what is the right decision, but you are talking about what can we actually do now, pretend as if we have decided, while it's only everybody agrees, so nothing to decide anymore. We are all on the same page, and we, in fact, you could even say we avoid a decision in a sense. That's a different organization, and that's a different way of working. A third one you can do is, and a lot of companies do that, in fact, is that you set up a specific procedure how to come to a decision. If you do that, if there, for example, you are saying we are making a majority vote or consent or whatever that is, whenever we apply that procedures, and this procedure then says go, you made a decision. It's not about whether or not it was the right or so, but we got a decision. It's a third way to actually play a different game, so to say.
What's interesting to me is that it appears that there is no right or wrong way. We sometimes condemn managers who just make a decision as the patriarch of the company and like, we go this way.
Yes.
Right. And then we go like, oh, he's so bossy, he's top down. But it might be suitable for the context, because that's how that's the show that the social system wants to see within that specific company. Yeah.
And I mean, what you just mentioned is the kind of fourth way how to make decision, which is by hierarchy. It is really that in organizations, they have a great social invention, which is hierarchy. So why is it so good? If you are in an organization, a lot of times, most of the employees actually stick to decisions that were made by superiors at every level. And the good thing about that is you don't have to give any reasons. So that's one way to get over the paradox of a decision, because you agreed to play this game in an organization. Whoever is superior can make a decision for that area. So that's really powerful. So, for example, really make very concrete examples. Suppose you are in an emergency room, you're doing an operation. I think as a patient, you are quite happy that somebody is making decisions rather than calling a committee and saying, what shall we do? There are situations where it is really helpful. Or think about something else. Suppose you are in an organization that out of whatever reasons really need a kind of restructuring. Which means that maybe you have to let go of a certain amount of people. Now, from the people's perspective, of course, that might not be nice. So who is making sure that in order to survive as an organization, who is to make those kind of difficult decisions? And yet again, hierarchy can help. So hierarchy is actually a social invention to be able to move on and make decisions, which that obviously comes responsibility for sure. And if you have the power, hierarchical power to decide, I would always say use it wisely.
I'm wondering, like, when we look at technology that is on the rise nowadays, especially in AI and machine learning, there are tons of decisions made by those AIs, by those networks. And I'm wondering, what is your take on how they manage paradoxities, and what do you think where this will lead?
What you are highlighting to is, in fact, a very important point that I believe AI is taking part in our decision-making processes, which is in organizations. And a lot of time people are saying, oh, no, we must not allow AI to take over and make decisions. And from my perspective, that is, I believe, somehow naive.
Well, it's a cultural game they set up, right? If you have a company, if you have a culture, so to say, that is not believing that the decision the AI made is really good, then playing the AI show is not what gets accepted.
Yeah, but the idea is what we always are doing is that we try to contribute a decision to a decision maker. So there's there's a group, and then we ask who is going to decide. But that's a construction that we are saying, oh, this person is actually the decision maker. If you have ever been a decision maker, you know it's not that easy. It's circular. Because when I was a manager, I not said, oh, we are doing it this way or that way, but I also thought about the consequences. So I said, if I decide that, who is going to follow? Is that actually something that if I decided now, will the organization implement it? And I tried only to decide those things or frame them in the way that the likelihood that it's actually going to happen is increased. And it's only if it's followed that it was really a decision of the organization. So it's always a process. Think about Angela Merkel. She always, from my perspective, from the outside, looked for, okay, where is the situation going? And sure enough, I believe she made influence in the background. But in the end, it's where do you go? And it's not only that it's one person who is deciding, but it's a decision process. And now you have AI in that game. And suppose for a second that we are saying, oh no, the AI is not deciding anything, but it can make proposals. So, and you start using AI, and before you make a decision, you are obliged to ask AI and give them all the information, and then AI makes proposal. The first time you said, not too bad, would have done the same. Okay, we go along, and that then repeats. What you are going to see is that, in effect, if you look at it, it looks as if still a decision maker makes the decision because that person has formally to write down in the end and say, this is what I decided. But in all practical terms, nothing is decided against the AI, maybe. So it's a process, and we should ask ourselves, how do we actually get AI into a decision-making process?
Yeah. There is a super interesting article that has been researched on by Natalia Kosmina. I'm pretty sure I mispronounced her name. It's called Your Brain on ChatGPT, Accumulation of Cognitive Debt When Using an AI Assistant for Essay Writing Tasks. So it's a research paper. Yeah. And what's interesting for me is they use different group settings. One group was they have to come up with a solution or at least a solution path for themselves and then use the AI and then ask the AI. And the other group was ask the AI right away. So when the group that asked the AI right away wrote down the prompt and got the result, they immediately went like, oh, that's what I would have done. This sounds right. The other group instead was like, oh, it's different from what I came up with. And they tweaked it and got better results. So the acceptance of not thinking first, but then get the result from the AI leads to us not thinking at all, actually.
Yeah.
And when I think of managing the paradox, I feel like we lose that bit of consciousness that you mentioned in the beginning of the episode when we see that research. Look at that research and just skip the thinking up front completely.
Yeah. So I know that study, and yes, you have that. Once you have tools, you become lazy. I mean, ask people outside there who of them can do written division, with big numbers. I guess a lot of people can't do that anymore. Or look at myself. I really once upon a time I was able to read a paper map. to get along in driving in traffic. Yeah, nowadays I use Apple Maps or Google Maps, and obviously I lose this kind of muscle of navigation. And most likely those kind of things are also happening with AI. But that's on a psychological level, isn't it? What you should also look at, and that is slightly different, is how does that actually play out in teams or an organization? Because then you have social processes, which in their communication potentially most likely include AI. And the question is, how are they going to do that? So as a leader, you might think about how do I design communications with AI that they help. And from my perspective, coming again back to decisions, because it's kind of a cornerstone. I see a decision-making process as at the base something that has two phases. There's an opening phase, and then there's a closing phase. Opening phase meaning coming up with ideas, perspective, constructing the context. Where should we look at? What must we not leave out? What is important for our decision? Coming up with kind of options, possibilities, perspective. That's opening. And being rational means finding the right balance of putting energy into finding data and information, and then knowing the kind of cutoff point. Most of times people are not that good at that, so there's a deadline, and by definition you have to come up with something. And then there's the second phase of closure, where you try to find a way that there is an accepted decision that becomes effective afterwards. And that is the kind of staging part we talked beforehand, being very good at reading a situation, if you will, reading a team or an organization, and knowing about how to actually get closure on a decision. And those are the two things you have to manage, and that it's all about. And AI most likely is going to influence this game.
I was mentioning that research because I was afraid that it becomes cultural acceptable that, if the AI said it, then it has to be right.
Yeah. Most likely for a lot of people that's going to happen, I suppose. And if you think about it, a lot of things are actually done by somebody else. We don't know how to get food. I mean, I go to the supermarket. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be able to survive on my own, I guess. And so a lot of things are happening like that, and there's a great danger in that. And I could imagine, like in a lot of times, technology will actually make the spread larger. So there are people who totally 100% rely on AI, always think it's right and doing that. And then there are other people who actually know how to leverage that technology. And that is certainly something that we as a society should look at. Or also if you are in a company, same thing. I mean, would be great if you use AI for customer service. But to what extent do you actually learn about new things, or if there are new products or new ways to handle that kind of stuff? So, and who is going to train the AI? Is the AI doing it on itself, or do we still want to have humans in the loop? And at which point? Those are all questions that certainly are going to be important the next years.
I was wondering, this podcast is about transformation, reorganizing company structures. Could be teams, departments. And most of the listening base are leaders, managers who are responsible for that. What tips or tricks do you have? Like some quick wins that we could give our listeners out there to manage the paradox better?
Yeah. So first of all, if you think about what you are saying, they are in transformation and change. What we do have in a kind of first way, we are always saying change is good. Yeah, that's the kind of first idea how people go into the situation. We need change. And if you take the paradox serious, then you are saying, wait a moment, what's on the other side? That is, so you have change and you have stability. And the idea that change is positive and then by definition change is negative, that one I would challenge. So if you look with a paradox lens, you would always look at what is the distinction we are making, in this case change and stability, and how are those defined, and how do we need them? What do we mean by change? And suppose for a second, for what has the stability been good for? Because there's obviously some positive in the stability we have right now. The situation we are in was a solution for something. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. So that rather than jumping ahead and always looking at what we have to change and what is it that is positive there, if you look paradoxically, you also make the other side strong and say it's about the balance of stability and change. Now, if you do that, I believe you are in a different game and you are looking much more on a kind of reflexes level on that. And we would always call that this a kind of leadership move, stepping outside of the situation and looking from above, so to say, on it. Which means you focus on something, you have a problem at hand. At the same time, while focusing on the problem, always also look at the context. I know it's a little bit schizophrenic because we are not able to do both at the same time. But those are the kind of two approaches you should always have. Do something, and while you're doing it, observe yourself. That makes a huge difference.
Yeah. One of the quotes that got me into consulting in the first place was, if you think something is entirely bad, you don't have enough information.
Yeah, exactly. No, it also means if you are in a situation and everybody agrees, most likely you are missing something. Because there must be some kind of disagreement. You must, if you have different perspectives, you will come to different valuations. And again, being rational actually means surfacing enough and important differences that apply to this kind of situation. Yes.
Timm, thank you so much for coming on to the episode. If people want to get in touch with you, if people want to learn more about the topic, of course, we have the book here. We have the links in the show notes. But what's the best way to reach out?
You can reach me at LinkedIn. That's very easy. Or you can go to our website, www.simon-weber.de.
Okay, I put that link into the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Okay, hey, thank you again so much for coming on to the episode. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Benjamin.
Of course. See you very, very soon. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Wow, you made it to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much. It would be really cool to hear from you via LinkedIn or email. And if you enjoyed this episode, and I really hope you do, because you made it this far, why not recommend it to someone who might enjoy it as well? Also, there is a refresh on the Stellar Work webpage, and I really hope you like it. We put a bunch of work and money to make it really worth the visit. Why not check it out at stellarwork.com. Thanks for listening, and talk to you very, very soon. Bye.